need to pause if we need to like discuss something. We'll just pause.
Okay. Okay, so we are reading verses 40 and 41 from chapter 3 on page 315 of the HYP. So, one who knows Kachari Mudra is unafflicted by disease, unafflicted by laws of cause and effect, karma, and free from the bonds of time, death. Mind moves in Brahman, K, because the tongue moves in space, K. Therefore, the perfected ones have named this mudra Kachari, moving in space, or Brahman. One who knows Kachari Mudra is one who has experienced and perfected it. The Sanskrit word veti, meaning knowledge, refers to knowledge through experience, not knowledge through intellectual concept. The benefits attributed to Kachari Mudra are those which result from experience of supra-consciousness or samadhi. Here we are told that Kachari is so powerful that the practitioner can reach a state beyond karma, that is, cause and effect, beyond time, death, and disease. These are all aspects of the influence of Shakti or Maya. The state of supra-consciousness is that of universal awareness, beyond duality and the finite mind. It is called Kaivalya, Nirvana, Moksha, Samadhi, or Brahma. These are all synonymous terms indicating the final stage or accomplishment of Raja Yoga. Kachari Mudra directly influences brain functions and awakens the higher sensors of awareness. Our mind functions within the confines of time and space, Ida and Pingala, but it is possible to transcend these two poles of duality. Normal brain functions have to undergo a transformation and restructuring so that supernormal functioning takes place. Time and space are concepts of the finite mind and perception. In yoga and tantra, they are said to be the tools of Maya, Prakriti, or Shakti. They are laws of nature, and the finite mind is a product of nature. If you can expand the consciousness beyond the awareness of the finite mind and natural phenomena, the consciousness will enter the realm of the infinite. Verses 42 and 43. When the upper cavity of the palate is sealed by Kachari Mudra, the bindu or semen cannot be lost even if one embraces a beautiful woman. Even when there is movement of the bindu and it enters the genitals, it is seized by closing the perineum and is taken upward. The effect of Kachari Mudra on the endocrine system and the pineal gland have already been discussed. If one has control of the reproductive fluid, one has control of nature, the body, and the mind. Of course, it is not easy to develop this control, but Hatha Yoga provides the methods. Kachari Mudra regulates hormonal production and activity in the brain centers, and there are other practices to directly control the secretory behavior of these reproductive organs. 44 and 45. With the tongue directed upwards, the knower of yoga drinks the fluid of the moon. Within 15 days, physical death is conquered. The yogi's body is forever full of the moon's nectar. Even if he is bitten by the king of snakes, Takshaka, he is not poisoned. Drinking the fluid or nectar of the moon is drinking or assimilating the fluid released from Bindu Visarga. Bindu is always depicted as a full moon. The nectar produced in Bindu is said to intoxicate the conscious mind and make the body resistant to toxins in the system. At a certain stage of spiritual evolution, this is an inevitable practice. At a certain stage of spiritual evolution, this is an inevitable process which takes place irrespective of the type of yoga you practice. There is a well-known story about Mirabai, one of the greatest saints and bhaktas of India. Her devotion to Lord Krishna was so intense that she lived in constant ecstasy through remembering him. Even when her mother-in-law fed her deadly poison, she remained unaffected. People say that Lord Krishna turned the poison into rose water or milk. Actually, her system was immune to it because of the flow of nectar from the bindu. According to Hatha Yoga, if the practice of Kachari Mudra can be perfected, After 2 weeks, the process of degeneration in the body is reversed. However, it takes a long time to perfect Kachari, but one should consider the fact that during the process of perfecting it, the body is slowly readjusting itself, and once it is perfected, it will only take a short time to release the fluid from Bindu. Verses 46 and 47. Just as fuel kindles fire and oil a lamp, so the indweller of the body does not vacate while the body is full of the moon's nectar. By constant swallowing of the tongue, he can drink Amaravaruni. I consider him of high lineage, heritage. Others destroy the heritage. In the previous slokas, it has been said that death occurs when prana leaves the body. It is the twofold force of prana which maintains life, the vital life-giving aspect and the force of will or desire. As long as desires remain unfulfilled, as long as the will to live is strong, and so long as the vitality exists, the consciousness remains in the body. Through the practice of Kachari, the prana is maintained in the body even while the consciousness moves into the higher realms during samadhi. This is achieved by channeling the total pranic force through Sushumna. The process involves the release of the body fluid the yogis call Amaravaruni. Amara refers to immortality or the moon, and Varuni is wine. Amaravaruni is the wine of immortality or of the moon. This wine is the chemical fluid secreted by Bindu Visarga. It is the nectar of pure consciousness. Just as the result of the union between a man and a woman is the release of reproductive secretions, so the union of Ida and Pingala with Sushumna in Ajna Chakra releases the fluid from Bindu. At that time, one experiences the climax of spiritual experience, which is more fulfilling than any empirical experience. With the release of Amara Varuni, the body is impregnated with spiritual or cosmic force and gives birth to higher consciousness, or Atman. The physical body is the feminine principle of Shakti. Mind is the masculine principle of Shiva, consciousness. The union of the two is realization of the indweller, the self. Yogi Swat Marama says the person who can drink Amara Varuni is from a worthy or high lineage. Those who live, procreate, and die without attaining any spiritual knowledge have not been fulfilling the purpose of life or evolution. They are only continuing the generations of families. However, once a person endeavors to know the spirit or pure consciousness, the whole physical structure undergoes a rearrangement, and even the genes of that person change. Consequently, the generations that follow are influenced by the achievements made in sadhana. The children of such a person and their children have a greater chance of achieving the same perfections. Therefore, the person who can drink Amar Varuni is truly venerable to their family. Verse 48. The word go means tongue and also means cow. When it enters into the upper palate, it is eating the flesh of the cow. It, Kachari, destroys the great sins. Here, Yogi Swat Marama clarifies the meaning of eating cow's flesh. Gomanza is the tongue and should not be literally interpreted to mean cow's meat. When the tongue is swallowed back into the nasal cavity, that's called eating cow's meat in Hatha Yoga. Of course, if you ask a non-vegetarian to eat meat, it would not sound unusual. But to the majority of Hindus, it would be considered sacrilegious. In fact, for any Hindu, to eat cow's meat is one of the worst crimes, and it incurs the worst karma. A Hindu considers a cow most sacred. It is worshipped as a form of Devi. Therefore, Swat Marama has had to elucidate on the practice of eating cow's meat. The practice of Kachari is said to destroy the great sins. What are those sins? There are many variants of 5 great sins described in both yogic and Buddhist texts alike. Some define these as killing a Brahmin, one who upholds spiritual values, drinking alcohol, and losing your senses, theft, adultery with the guru's wife, and being in the company of people who do such things. However, this is a social and moralistic interpretation. In other texts, we find more personal reference to the 5 great sins as defects in character. Overt crimes are not stated, but their cause within the individual is defined. Lust, greed, anger, fear, ignorance, and or jealousy. These are known as the 6 enemies in some texts. How does Kachari destroy great sins? No matter how much you practice Kachari, once your desire or emotion has pushed you into action, and one of these defects has manifested in your behavior, even one such sin has been committed, it's not going to alter what you have done. However, becoming established in Kachari can bring about a change in your consciousness so that you learn from the mistake and do not make it again, so that you learn how to manage these inner forces properly without an unnecessary residue of guilt or anxiety. Kachari helps to overcome gross emotions and passions that compel you to react with anger, greed, and so on. You can overhaul the very pattern of your thoughts and desires. In this way, we can say that sins are destroyed. However, let us not misunderstand sin in this context due to religious connotations. Rather, let us see sins as obstacles to spiritual progress. These negative modes of mind, which grip the body and force you to act, can become a powerful bondage to lower levels of awareness and can hinder further development. They are not to be suppressed, yet they have to be overcome, and Kachari Mudra gives a direct method for doing so by recognizing their subtle forms. So how are we doing, Pam, in terms of?
I mean, we're good with time. If you want me to take over reading or if you want to pause and have a discussion.
Yeah, we should discuss. There was a lot of stuff in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that whole thing with the cows, I've read in the Bhakti tradition that if you're I've never read that they're Devis. I've read that they, in their next life, will become human, and if you kill them in their next life, they're going to kill you. So that's why they don't eat cow. Yeah, I never heard of a cow as a Devi, though. Like, a Devi is like a demigod, like someone who controls the wind or the water, like Vayu, or, I mean, not someone, I mean, like, you know, an energy that controls that. I'm going to have to look into it deeper. And the thing is, like, in a lot of the Vedic texts, they're eating meat. I've read that, like, from the stories of a long time ago, and they hunt, you know, like, I read that it was only until Buddhism came and started to influence Hinduism that vegetarianism became such a thing. Like, there are Muslims in India, not Muslims, there are Hindus in India who do eat meat in certain areas. So I don't know. There's a lot of stuff in there. It seems like opinion based, but you know, it's not bad to be vegetarian. And then the stuff about I thought that was interesting what he was saying about like the nectar of the moon and samadhi and all that stuff. I've read about the sages who, when they passed away, like they would intentionally leave their bodies, and then their bodies would smell fragrant and they wouldn't decay for a really long time. And they would say that it was like the it was all the prana built up. So maybe they were doing this Kachari Mudra. That's Pam. That's Pam.
I thought the last verse 48, well, as Pam has pointed out, sometimes when you're reading, it doesn't totally sink into your brain. But the thing about the underlying characteristics, and in this case, they're describing things that one would want less of, like greed and anger and lust, et cetera, are more core than the actual crime itself. And I thought that that paragraph was very interesting. It's still difficult for me to grasp the whole idea of Kachari being able to overcome all of these things, except within the context of understanding that by the time you can do Kachari, you are already really far along the spiritual path. Is that an okay interpretation?
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like your energy has to be high enough and a whole bunch of other things come along with that. But I mean, I wonder, because there are all these stories about bogies. Sorry, I can't talk too much today. There are all these stories about bogies who like use these techniques. I don't know if this technique in particular, but they get all these big powers, this control over the physical universe, and then they use it for their own like bad stuff, sins, I guess you would say. It's a very Christian term, but so I don't know. Maybe.
No.
Is it describing it as using it not for tools to get stuff that you might want and that kind of thing, or do things that you might want to do, but as a tool to shift into what almost sounds like nirvana.
Yeah.
I like this idea because I think I felt we've talked about this, but I didn't know there was like a Sanskrit word, this idea of veti, which means knowledge through experience versus knowledge through intellectual concept. And that's what she's saying with this mudra, one who has experienced it. Like we could learn everything about it, but we can't get to this state of samadhi until we actually practice it. But then I also think it is a little scary because, like Amanda's saying, one could practice it and master it immediately, but then take advantage of the benefits by manipulating their powers on other people through like this bogey world.
Mm-hmm.
So there needs to be a balance of like, if you can experience something like this, like sometimes Amanda will warn you when you start meditating that you might experience these certain types of things, and if you start to experience them, they may make you a little nervous.
Yeah.
If someone has experienced this Kachari Mudra and then realizes it's like Sue was saying, like you're already very far advanced on the spiritual path, possibly you might take advantage of that. So you do have to experience it through practice, but you also have to educate yourself on it too. You know, I'm not going to speak badly about anybody, but I was surprised to learn that a very powerful leader in our country has a spiritual advisor. And sometimes I almost wonder if he is like a bogey, like if he actually has these powers and does this practice and is just taking advantage of it.
Well, Pam, you just triggered a very lower order unworthy thought in my head. Want to know, who is this guy? You know?
Yeah, I'm wondering too. Who are you talking about?
Trump. They had his spiritual advisor come on TV.
Who?
Trump.
Oh, Trump? Well, they're a
He is
Catholic.
spiritual
They're a Catholic advisor. She's an evangelical.
I don't know who she is. I didn't see anything about her. I just saw like a clip of her, and I was surprised to learn. I'm like, oh, the fact that he had any type of advisor like that, I was just like, that was interesting.
Yeah, she's an evangelical priest. The thing is, the evangelicals really like him because he's pushing through policy that, you know, aligns with their belief system, whether or not he's acting in a way that aligns which is so funny because Biden is very religious, right? Did you
Yeah.
notice that in his concession speech? He's like, long live the church or whatever, right at the end. He squeezed that in. I was like, what? But like I feel like he actually goes to church and actually tries to practice the teachings of Jesus. So
No, they said that about him. That he
yeah,
goes
it's an
every
interesting
Sunday.
juxtaposition, right? It's really interesting.
Wait, what?
It's an interesting juxtaposition between the two of them.
Yeah. I don't know.
You can listen to your spiritual advisor, or you can just ignore everything they tell you, right? It's like, maybe he's not listening to this woman, or the woman may be a bogey in some respect. Who knows?
I thought he was the bogey.
Well,
He's an
it is
asura.
him doing anything that doesn't benefit himself. And so he might have a spiritual advisor, which he doesn't really consider. He doesn't listen to most of his advisors anyways. He never does. In terms of her as a spiritual advisor, my guess is he's listening to her insofar as it continues his power or increases his power in the evangelical community. And that's it. This has nothing to do with his own spirituality. It's hard to imagine that.
Yeah, I was just like, for someone like him, and I don't know him that well. I know what, like, the basic shell of him, but like just the fact that he even bothered with having one.
Well, looks good. I mean, from like an Ayurvedic perspective, looking at him, he's ridden with tamas and rajas, like to such an extreme that his behavior is really reflecting that.
Yeah.
He's not like a healthier, balanced individual, right? You can like tell by the inflammation in his eyes and his face, and so
Yeah, he's quite a character.
my teachers were talking about this week in our lectures, and I'm going to talk about this in class tonight, but how we act out of the gunas. Like if you have an act that has the intention of being, so say you want to like get revenge on someone, that's in the mode of rajas, then any result, like maybe you'll get the revenge, maybe you'll get what you wanted, but the result of that is the karma that comes back is going to be rajasic towards you. And the same with tamas. If you act out in tamas, you make tamasic decisions and you're going to get tamasic karma back. So, I mean, we can all kind of rely on the law of karma here and just wait it out and see what happens when you make those kinds of decisions. It doesn't bode well. There's a universal law at play. So,
Yeah.
and it's a part of his karma, right? To learn lessons he has to learn. So, let's see what happens.
Yeah, it's been I like taking this yoga practice and taking it out of like the very Zen studio and then making it really work in the real world, because not just recently, but even just like through my job on Wall Street, through rainy Monday mornings on the subway platform, through like the real hard times of work, like having this yoga practice really show up and create that samadhi state, but also like not like to be real about it, because it's like you can't just say like, oh, this is his karmic path, he's allowed to act like that either. Like, and that's where the balance is for me as a yogi. Like, at what point, and not just him, he's just one example, but like if of anybody, like at what point is it okay for someone, like, I'm not asking this as like a real question, but like it's just questions that are constantly going on in my head. At what point do you say something? At what point do you not say something? Just in like the general everyday life to life, like someone wants to cut you in line, like it's not acceptable to do that. The line starts, especially now with COVID when the lines are long, like the line's back there, dude, go back there. And it's like, but do I just let the person go in line? I know I'm not really making sense. But like,
No, it makes sense, Pam. It's the texts say that the yogis should treat themselves like a lion and others as lambs. If that helps any.
but it's not, it's like I get all of it. It's just like putting it into practice every moment of every day. It's like, it's challenging. And you're just constantly watching myself, like taking deep breaths, especially like because we're in this virtual world. It's like you can't really express emotion through, like we experienced this with the Alicia Keys book. For those of us, like I've been telling people, like if you read the book, which I did, you're not getting the same experience out of it as you will when you're listening to her, because you can hear her emotion coming through. Mm-hmm. Like the book, if you read it, it's nothing special. But when you listen to it and like, so like, and then tying this whole yoga world into that, I've been picking up the phone a little bit more and being like having, or Zooms more with people at work, which I never did. Like my whole world was email, even in person. But now it's like we're losing that like emotion. I want people to like understand I'm being understanding of them and not snippy, because I can see how they're reading my emails. But it's just like, I guess when you become part of this and it just becomes like every day, I think I mentioned this last week, like just watching myself watch the world. It's been interesting getting out of my head. And you really have to get yourself to that state of calm to be able to like balance yourself.
Well, yeah, it's a state of non-attachment. I'm not attached to like whatever perceived slight. Not me, I'm just saying generally they're saying we're supposed to get to the state of like, we're not attached to how people are acting or treating us. We're not attached to any of, the outside external things. Our focus is on elevating ourselves. And I don't think we can elevate ourselves by controlling other people. It's never going to work.
No.
So you kind of give that up. Baby, don't touch that, okay? It's behind your back.
Yeah.
When I was very young, there was an author who I really liked she's a famous author. She won the Nobel Prize and she had 4 gazillion bestsellers, deservedly. And she went through, she died when she was in her 90s. So, and she started writing when she was very young. So you could watch her progression through her own life, through her writings. And one of the things that was really very clear, she was somewhat intellectual about it, but she developed the ability, well, she was a writer, and I think writers can do this, but she developed the ability to sit back and observe and see. She was able to even observe her own interactions and the patterns of interactions that exist out there. The interactions that you have with objects in the world or with humans in the world. And in some ways, what you, Amanda and Pam, were just talking about reminds me of that. It is the ability to step back, to be somewhat emotionally removed, and to witness what's going on in front of you. And even to witness what comes up in yourself and to check it, eventually to check it if it's not what you want yourself to be doing, or to enhance it if it is what you want yourself to be doing. And it's, I think you're right. I think yoga and this kind of studying helps you to do that.
Yeah.
Teeny tiny little steps towards something.
All right, well, it's 8:10, so should we do breath and meditate, and we'll try to stay on track this week?
Amen. Let's do it. All right, I can smell gardeners coming. I'm gonna mute myself.
Oh boy. All right, so sitting up nice and tall, taking a few breaths through the nose. And bringing your right hand, doing a few rounds of alternate nostril breathing, closing your right nostril with your thumb. Inhale through your left. Close left, exhale right. Inhale right. Close right, exhale left. Inhale left. Close left, exhale right. Inhale right. Close right, exhale left. Taking 5 more rounds on your own breath. You'll take your time to finish your rounds, exhaling out through your left nostril. Taking your time to settle into your meditation. I'm going to set the timer now, but you'll join us when you're ready. Bringing hands together in front of your heart. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you, Pam.
Sue.